Let's name this one losing out on $900,000 in profit in order to make $50,000 profit a month, but losing the time value of money on 6 to 8 years. This audio is going to be about if you're truly in the entrepreneurship game. You could call it sales too, but let's stick with just entrepreneurship. It's a completely different shift mentally. It's a lot of learning. It's all constant learning that will never stop. But the point of it is going to be why I think if you're truly about it, truly about being your own boss, being the boss, building your empire as a man, as a woman, I'm going to give you the man's perspective. Why it never will make sense to have a job. And not never in the sense, if you could have a job that didn't take 8 years of med school to be making $2 to $5 million a year, and it was just a sales job for another company that was already in place, and you could earn $2 to $5 million a year doing it, currently, that's the only job I would take. So I don't want to say never, because it's a calculation, it's not even balancing, it's a calculation game of money in regards to the time. The bet that I made was I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to bet that I'm going to be able to figure out in the next 30 years, let's say, how to make $1 million plus $10 million a month profit by starting different businesses and partnering with different individuals. And I think that's going to get me to multiple $100 million. The goal is $2.4 billion at least, by partnering with other individuals that can help me get there. And I think that that's a better bet if you have the skill set, and more than the skill set can be learned, but if you have the work ethic and the effort, capacity to do whatever it takes to get there, versus taking a sales job, making 100 to 200, even 250, let's say. I did the calculation at 150, but let's say I could make, in a sales job, let's say I could make 200,000 a year times 8 years, so 1.6 mil. So how did I potentially lose out on 1.6 mil? But I'm willing to make that bet because I can make $50,000 in a month profit, but it might take 6 to 8 years, to get there. Or it might take 10, 15 years, or it might take 3. And the calculation game is that you don't know. But I think that that always makes sense to bet on yourself, especially with the internet, with the amount of opportunity out there, with the amount of things you can sell and make a commission on. I don't think it makes sense to take any job ever, unless you can, off the bat, be making $2 to $5 million a year, and it doesn't take you 8 years of med school and 4 years of college, or 5 years of med school and 4 years of college, whatever it is. I don't like that bet. The perspective that I'm coming around on is since I was 17, I've never had a job. I've never been employed by another man or another company. And sure, I get the little ego boost kick out of that. But my reasoning was, I didn't think it made sense. From the standpoint, I valued the time and the learning, whether this was luck because I read so much, but I valued, based on what people that were 40 to 60 years ahead of me were saying, I valued the learning and the failing more than I valued the short-term dollars. So I valued learning how to do accounting, learning how to save on taxes, learning how to hire people, learning how to sell, learning how to market, learning how to gauge different markets, learning how to choose what to sell, and learning how to deal with customers and deal with people and persuade and make people feel good and make people happy and make people buy. I valued learning about that for the past 8 years more than I valued a job, an income, because the trade-off I would have had to make is have no time. It's impossible for someone to be learning as much as me or anyone who works for themselves when you're in a job working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. It's impossible. You don't have the time in the day. You can't compete with that. And because you can't compete with that, that means long term, the payout side for me when I sell my business or when I sell one of my businesses or whatever the case may be, the payout is astronomically different. So let's take two people. One person's making $150,000 a year off the bat in a sales job, but they have no time. They have no time available. And the other person is making $50,000 a year, if that, or $0 a year. But in 10 years from now, they're going to be making $100,000 a month. So for 10 years, the two people are both working. I'm not going to do the math on the time and value of money for the person working the job, but in 10 years, the person making $150K a year has collected $1.5 million in profit, and the other person has collected zero. However, the other person is going to have vastly more knowledge and skill sets than the person working in the job, if they were truly working on their craft and working on learning and out-failing the person in the job, because the mindsets are both different in both parties. So then year 10 comes, and year 10 years in, I've seen people do it. I've seen people start a company and do 2.3 mil their first year, like very close people with me. I've seen it take people 3-4 years, but let's do 10 for a blowout number, just so that it's like, so you can really get the idea of maybe it is worth it if I look far enough into the future and I know that I have the work ethic to bet on myself and not bet on my time and my job and my short-term skill set, bet on the long term, because we're young enough to do it. So year 11, person with the job has now done, 1650, 1.65 mil. But the other person does $1 million profit their first year, or they're able to collect $1 million in assets. So the net worth, because this is I'm not going to do the math on who's spending more type thing, because obviously the person that's making $150K a year is going to have higher expenses and a different lifestyle than the person making zero. But the sacrifice idea is there. So year 11, one person's at $1 million, one person's at $1 million profit, one person is at $1,650,000. Year 12, the first person is at 1.8 mil profit. The second person is at 2 mil profit. And this is assuming no scale, because if they can do $1 million, there's no reason they can't do 2 to 5. But let's, at any point that they scale. But at year 13, it's no longer even close. Now it's 1.95 mil, 2 mil versus 3 mil in a 3-year span. And this is also presuming that the person in the entrepreneurship realm hasn't scaled at all. Like, doing $1 million 3 years in a row and not scaling is super unrealistic, because $1 million is nothing. It's not a big number. It's very small for a business to do, especially if you have 10 years of experience in working and hustling and learning and out-efforting, even if they're putting the same amount of effort. And one person's effort allows them to make $150K a year, or 100 or 200 or whatever. And the other person's effort allows them to make zero, but they're building the equity in this business. Oh yeah, didn't want to forget about that. The equity in a business, they own the business 100%. If the equity in a business that's doing $1 million profit per year at just 5 times free cash flow means the business is worth 5 mil. So come year 11, not only do they have $1 million cash from the profit, presuming no expenses. Let's say the 150 is after expenses, the mil is after expenses. They also have a company they could sell for 5 mil, which puts them at 6. So just at the 10 to 11 year mark, if they start the business then and go with it, they're at 6 times, 3 to 6 times what the person with a job is at. And this is only 10 years in. When we get to 20 years, it's not even close. The person in a job cannot compete at all, because they don't know enough about credit, because they've been working at you don't have the time. They haven't had the time to learn about credit. They haven't had the time to learn about financing. They're probably putting their own money into real estate deals versus finding financing for 10x leverage, or diversifying, or having employees work for them. And then we get to the employee side too. If the business owner has 10, 20, 50, 100 people working for them, and the other person is a one-man band making let's say they're making $200,000-$300,000 a year now, or even $4, just to give them a potential added benefit. They don't have any equity in the business. Maybe their investments are paying them $100K a year. So let's say their total income is now $500,000. But the other person, the entrepreneur, has 10, 20, 50, 100 people, 1,000 people working for them. Let's say 100, which I think is a low number. 100 people working for them in 10 years, 10 people a year sign on. They're not making them any money until after year 10, for the example. If every person brings them $50,000 to $100,000 in value, there's an extra 5 to 10 mil right there. And the payouts on that are probably going to be half or less. So anywhere from 2.5 mil to 5 mil extra profit because that all those 100 people working for them. And if some of those people are salespeople, let's say 20 of those people are salespeople, those salespeople should all be able to bring $500,000 apiece to the company. So let's say just 10% of that 100 employees is salespeople. That's 5 mil right there. Let's say the salespeople get half or 25% or whatever. The salespeople, those 10 salespeople all make $100,000 a year, but they brought in 5 mil. Let's say you got good margins. It's impossible to compete with an entrepreneur in the long term on the financial money game by taking a job that isn't making you 2 to 5 mil off the bat. 2 to 5 mil off the bat, it makes a difference. So let's say the person in the job has a job that at 20 years old, so both have the same starting point, is making $2 million off the bat. But I don't think anyone's going to be able to name that or find that. That's not a doctor. A doctor, you still have to wait another 5 years. So then that's the only bet that may be equivalent to being an entrepreneur. But I still think there's no scale to it. So a doctor can make 2 to 5 mil a year, 3 mil a year, but they can't really make 10, 20, 40, 50, and they don't have equity in the business, or it's not as valuable. So it's the only one that's kind of close. But let's say at 25, someone becomes a doctor, and then they're making 2 mil a year. So for the first 10 years, they've got 20 mil saved up. Then it makes a difference, because then you can take the 20 mil, 10% down, 20% down on $100 million worth of real estate, for example math. And now you got $100 million worth of real estate, 10% cap rate. You're making $10 million a year on that, plus you're making $2 million in your job. Then it makes sense to be in a job. But that's a completely different skill set. And they're still, the doctor and the entrepreneur are in the same boat because they're still investing time. The doctor's investing 9 to 10 years too. 4 years undergrad, 5 years med school, 4 years med school, 6 years med school, whatever that is. The entrepreneur is investing 2, 5, 10 years, whatever it takes to grow. But the entrepreneur still has scale. So I would say the best bet, the number one bet you could make if you want to be extremely fucking wealthy in the future is to be an entrepreneur. Second best bet, be in medicine. Third best bet, get a sales job. But everything other than that, business owners have it the best. I don't think you can find a way to compete and compare other than be a politician, be Nancy Pelosi, and on paper make $150K a year, but you're worth 100 mil, but that's a whole nother complaining story, and I don't like to complain. But something to think about. If you're 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, even if you're 25, and you've played both sides. You've either had the job side and you're making good money, but it's something to think about, and now you're behind the other entrepreneurs in the game. Like, I wish I would have started earlier. I wish I would have started when I was 13 instead of 17, because I'd be more ahead, but that's water under the bridge. It's just a learning experience. I get to pass that on and share that with you, the listener, so that if you're 13 listening to this, maybe you get a head start on me. The world's abundant. The universe is abundant. You winning isn't taking away from me. I'm making this podcast for free. I want to see you win because it makes me feel good, and it probably helps me out long term. Because if you know I can help you win, that makes me valuable to you, and then you want to work with me because you know I'm a winner, and I can help you win more, and then we partner, and we both win more, and we both make money. We have a financial incentive on both ends. But that's my thought today. I think the best bet you can make if you want to become extremely wealthy is be an entrepreneur, be a business owner. I don't think anyone else can compete with you, especially in the long term. Short term, other people can make it look like they're winning. So Like, let's compare the entrepreneur and the doctor to an average person in a job making 50, 60, 80, 100, 120, 150, 180, 200, up to 250,000, because that's about the salary cap for most jobs. In the first 5 years, and even up to 10 years, it's going to look like they're winning, because they might have the house, and they might have the car, and they might have started to grow a family and have kids, or they might have the watch, or they might have the expensive dinners. And I spent money on all that shit too. Like, I spent plenty of money on all the dumb stuff. So it's not to say I didn't. I liked to have my cake and eat it too. I like to play both sides. If I could go back, I would fix those mistakes and not have spent the money to flex and to have fun and put it back in my business, because I'd be further along than what I am now. But that's another mistake you get to learn from that I made that you hopefully don't have to make. So the podcast is called Mistakes Were Made. These are all the mistakes I've made. If I could do something differently, here's what I would do. Use it, run with it, learn it. And here's what I see for the future too, I guess. There's my take for today. If you're thinking about the best long-term bet, being a business owner is the way to go, and nothing else can compete. Thank you so much for listening. The current offers I have available, I do automated e-commerce stores, anywhere from 5 to 60,000 a piece, depending on what your specific need is. I have the numbers to back it. I got trailing 12s for everything. I've put guarantees in place, so no matter what, you make your money back over a certain amount of time, and then everything on top of that is profit. I have personal credit incentives, personal bank account incentives, and then business credit and banking incentives. Stuff like you open a credit card, you don't spend any money on it, and they pay you $200 to open the account. And it boosts your credit, and you get cash in your pocket. If you have a business, then it's even more. Then it's like 2 to 4K. If it's a personal card and personal bank accounts, it's like 1 to 2K. Best way to get a hold of me for this is email me at summitsme, SUMMITSME, @gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram at THEJOSHALBO. Probably going to post this on YouTube too, so hopefully that's helpful. Let me know what you think. Tell me where I'm wrong so I can learn too. I'm making this for you for free to tell you where I've made mistakes. Tell me what I'm still missing. Not to banter, but to grow together. Thank you so much for listening. I love you. I hope you win. I'll talk to you soon.